Hi guys, welcome back. This is the last episode in Sustainsessions. Oh no. And this is episode 5, where I attempt to talk to you about learning some new skills, as well as breaking out the box, and hope to maybe give you a bit more about my journey and sort of the path I've taken, and see if that in some way can help somebody else. So thank you again for joining us. As I said, this is episode 5, and just glad to be here after so many episodes of talking about these things to do with my artistry. As I said, the purpose behind it is I'm coming up to my 7th year of releasing music, and it's actually going to be on my birthday, which is the 28th of June, this Sunday, my anniversary of releasing music. And as a result of that, I'm releasing an EP, Breakthrough Sessions 2, on that day, and you can go and get that on various different platforms, Spotify, Apple Music, iTunes. But I just wanted to share some of the things I feel like I've learned in my time as an artist and as someone in the quote-unquote gospel industry, and some of the things that I think are just some of the wisdom and stuff that I've learned that I'd like to share with you. So this one, as I said, I'm going to be talking to you about learning new skills. I've touched about it in other programs or in the other episodes, but I just want to share a bit more in depth of my particular method, how I was led to do different things and stuff like that. So one of the main reasons I would say to you to invest in learning some new skills is really just the cost savings, which I think above all make things more sustainable for you. As I said, it depends on your aims as to what you're trying to achieve in music. For me at the moment, my main priority is releasing as many projects as possible. I just want to have a body of work out there that really reflects who I am, and I felt like it's taken me quite a bit of time to get to that point where I can confidently stand a bit more behind my projects. I think everywhere steps in the process, I felt like I could stand behind the projects, but it's always nice to be feeling like you're putting out your best work and putting your best foot forward, and that can take time, especially if you are learning new skills. So a bit just in terms of my journey, I started really as a singer, came to the Lord in 20 oh my gosh, I'm even forgetting now, 2007 is when I came to the Lord. I released my first EP in 2013. So that itself had a bit of an incubation process. But the learning new skills part came where I received some money from who's now my wife, who was just a friend at the time. And she invested in a MacBook Pro that enabled me to start my own studio. And so every project I've released under my own name has either been recorded or self-released. Only one of them hasn't been self-recorded, which is the live EP. All the rest of them I've actually recorded myself and put out myself and invested in myself and stuff like that. So along that process, I learned how to mix. I've learned how to do photography. I've learned how to do videography. I've learned how to edit video. I've also learned how to what else? Videography, photography, mixing, design as well, on a very basic level, at least my artwork and stuff. And so what that means at this point, all that amount that I'm talking about that I've learned, means I could just tell you in real world terms the difference in price of projects for me. I mean, my first EP, I think it cost maybe nearly like $2,000 to put out, and I don't think I made very little back from that. At this point, this project is costing me around £200, and that's because I chose to have an instrumentalist play on it, but I had recorded the majority of the instruments myself, and those costs are really just literally from an instrumentalist to play on some of the songs. For mastering, I still like to get my songs mastered by someone else. I know a great mastering engineer, and also just the actual release costs itself, the distribution costs. So probably looking at maybe like $235 really. Breakthrough Sessions, the first one I released last year, I probably put out for probably $125. So at this point, I've managed to get all my costs down to around £125. And for me, that's very sustainable. You know, if every year I put out one project, for example, I can easily justify within myself paying £125 for that privilege to put out a project. That to me is sustainable. That's something I'm willing to invest every single year, and I've invested a lot more than that, really. So so many different areas I've invested in, so I'm kind of just bringing everything together kind of in this one and talking about the various different things. So yeah, I started off, as I said, just as a singer. Through necessity, I learned how to record. Now, I had done some recording all the way back to like secondary school, beginning of college. I learned the basics of tracking yourself. I started on Cubase, was what I started on at sixth form college. And I think I had a PC before that, and I used to produce a bit on Reason. And then I did like a summer school. I'm trying to think of the different formal things I've done in terms of tracking and learning in that way. And that's pretty much it, really. The rest of it's been trial and error. I couldn't really tell you the formal process of learning and how I learned different things. I felt like it really was the Lord leading and guiding me into different things. But especially nowadays, you've got so much information on YouTube. People like Recording Revolution. I love Recording Revolution. There's so many different people. I can't even think of them all off head, who can teach recording and stuff like that. Mixing, my wife graciously bought me a course, I believe it was for one of my birthdays, where I did a formal mixing course. Just even stage one, I think there's 2 different stages to it, at Morley's College in South London. And that was another place where I learned mixing. And even then, I wasn't confident enough to mix, really. What the turning point was for me is that I mixed a song of mine. It took me 12 hours to mix it. And that wasn't even including vocals, because strangely enough, the mixing course I did didn't include vocals. That was for the next term, which obviously you'd have had to pay more money for. So I just paid, my wife paid for that. I did the first semester, and by the time I'd finished with the course, the mixing course, I wasn't really confident enough to mix my own stuff. But I learned the basics. So I learned about compression, I learned about EQ, I learned about reverb, I learned about delays, I learned about sends, I learned about organizing a session. I learned the fundamentals. And this is the thing I'd say in music, and especially any new skill you want to learn, the fundamentals are really the most things you need. What I'm learning as I'm learning various different things is that the fundamentals are the key. And then beyond that, it's all expression, and it's all subjective as to the other things you need to learn. But there's certain things that I think are just fundamentals that you will learn within an industry. So as I said, for mixing, it's just learning the basic tools of mixing, balancing a mix, the volumes, volume control, different elements like that. But other stuff I've learned after, like how to really dig into a compression to compressor, and kind of what compression does in terms of bringing things forward and back in the mix, of how it can make something sound squashed, or it can make something sound wider depending on the amount you apply. Putting makeup gain within a compressor. These are things I learned after. But so yeah, anyway, I was telling the story. It took 12 hours to mix that song. When I mixed it and I gave it to a mix engineer, I took all my mixing off of it and I gave it to a mix engineer, and what I got back instrumental wise was exactly what I had spent 12 hours doing. So although it spent me 12 hours doing it, it was a new skill, and what I realized is that I could actually mix myself. And that's where I just took the decision from there to at least attempt to mix myself, because to be honest, at the time I didn't really have the money to pay other engineers. And so I've had scenarios where I've given it to engineers and not liked certain aspects of the way things have come back, and that's what kind of led me to get into engineering a bit more. I mean, I am already tracking myself and producing myself as well, so I may as well mix as well. And so that's how I've arrived at this point. This is probably actually the only 3rd or 4th project that I've put out where I'm actually mixing myself and stuff like that, but this is the first time I'm mixing full instruments, BVs, the whole 9 really. So I'm really proud of this achievement actually. And it all came from a seed of just, I never even knew that I really wanted to do mixing. I think when my wife got the course for me, I was like, okay, this is cool, but I didn't even know if I really wanted to mix, to be honest. But it was a great investment and a great present that my wife got me. As I said, in relation to photography, videography, I felt the Lord leading me to buy a camera, so I invested in that camera. And then really, I had a friend that did a bit of photography, videography. I just asked him some questions. He gave me some basic information. And then from there, I took that and started researching, and I just went crazy with the researching on YouTube and different things like that. So you can really go crazy just asking questions and going on YouTube, and you can develop a new skill. You can really learn a new skill. And I think with that, in this day and age, the world is your oyster. You don't have to be confined to your previous limitations. You can actually decide, I'm going to try something different. I'm going to try and learn something different. I'm going to try and approach things differently and see if there's a way that I can upskill. So that was photography and videography. Even playing a guitar, like playing an instrument. I used to have guitar lessons when I was in secondary school, but it was strange. In the guitar lessons, all I would do was sing with a friend of mine. We used to just sing. So I never really learned guitar per se. Like I just didn't learn guitar. And also on top of that, I just never learned it. I used to sing all the time. I learned one bass line, which was Fly Away by Lenny Kravitz. And I remember playing it at the time thinking I can kind of play bass, but I didn't really pursue any of that stuff. As I said, I got classically trained to get grade 3 on piano as well, but didn't really use that. And then what happened was when I came back to music, these desires for things started to come back. So for me, I bought a guitar. I felt like I should buy a guitar, and I bought a guitar, and it stayed in my room, I think, for about probably like 2 years. I'd pick it up every now and then. I picked it up one time and I wrote a song, which I still haven't actually even released, but I really do like that song. And it was a song I wrote just with like literally 2 chords, and just going back and forth with those 2 chords. So yeah, it's weird. Like, you just really have to kind of be open to learning new skills. And if you feel like God is leading you to do something, just buy it and then just pray, and there'll be a path that'll be opened up to you to learn that thing. Because I believe what it says, even in the word where it says the Holy Spirit will lead you into all truth. And I just really feel the Holy Spirit can teach you all things, and he can use people to really give you certain level of information and stuff like that. So that's been my journey. I would say definitely for me, it's kept my costs down. As I've said, I've learned how to do things independently. It's so much more work than but you know what, in this industry, you're going to pay one way or the other. You're going to pay with your time, or you're going to pay with your money. And for me, I don't have the most amount of time, but sometimes I don't necessarily have the money to pay for all the things that I need to pay for. So I kind of embraced learning new things. I definitely don't think I'm better than anyone for having learned new things, especially because what can happen is you can kind of become a jack of all trades, king of none. And that is a little bit probably how I feel at the moment. But I'm able to get stuff out, and and that for me, as I said, is the greatest privilege for me as an artist, to be able to get music out into the world and to share my expression. I think the hardest thing, or the element that I haven't learned yet, is really how to market it well and how to learn that side of things. I think that side of things can be tough without money. But I'm sure, just as with the other things, there are ways of doing that stuff. I know some great people, like a good friend of mine who is really good at marketing, building social networks, the whole nine, for themselves. And I've seen them do it, and the amount of work they put into it, and I just have to salute for that. But yeah, it can be a tough road. Like, I'm not going to say learning new skills is easy. It can mean years of obscurity. Like, I've had gaps between my EPs, for example, like live EP. So there was a gap of nearly 2 years where I wasn't involved in a project, which was 2014 to 2016. And then between 2016, like another 2 years before I begun to release music by myself. And in that whole time, I felt very frustrated. I can't pretend that I didn't feel very frustrated. So if you are doing that, don't be afraid to sow and pay money into other people doing things for you if putting out product is your immediate goal. But stay committed to the journey of learning. That's what I would say. And stay committed to learning new skills and learning new things. And if you feel led to do something, I've had many discouragements over time about the various things I've picked up. That's why now most of the time I don't tell someone if I'm picking up a new skill. I just get to it and start learning it and let my fruit speak for me, because I'd rather do that than you speak to people. And sometimes it's a territorial thing. Sometimes it's just they don't understand the journey God has you on. Sometimes it doesn't make sense to them that you should be able to do something that they've spent a lot of years learning. And now I'm not saying you're going to be able to do it to their level. As I've said, it's about becoming a master in the areas you've been sent to. But for me, definitely in those skill sets, I definitely think I'm above average in most of them. And that's just purely due to the time and the research I've put into it to understand what I'm doing. So, for example, like with cameras, I understand aperture, I understand shutter speed, I understand the different modes on a camera and the various different things that they do. I may not understand everything about lighting and how that applies to pictures. There will be gaps and stuff in your knowledge, but it grows as you immerse yourself in the world. And I think that's the key thing. You have to treat skills, everything that you want to approach, as its own world. Like singing is a world, recording is a world, producing is a world, mixing is a world, photography is a world, videography is a world. Like, these are things that people make careers off of. So it's useful for you to understand and really show respect to the skill you're trying to learn, and not be too eager to say I do something. Like for me, I do these things, but I don't necessarily go out to people and go, I'm a photographer, because I feel like that's slightly disrespectful to the art and the time that people have spent becoming a professional photographer. I'm not a professional photographer. I'm probably a very enthusiastic amateur when it comes to videography. Probably exactly the same thing, exactly the same way I feel. Mixing, a very similar thing. I wouldn't say I'm a mix engineer at this point. I may be getting there. So I think you have to show a reverence as well to the skills you're learning, because that will help when you're engaging with people in those worlds, for you to have a level of not even respect, but just understanding, mutual ground that you can meet people with, because you can talk about the various different things. I think being a student is, I guess, the overall message of what I'm saying. Be a student of everything you're trying to learn, and approach the things with the reverence and respect. They need their worlds that need their own attention. They need their own understanding. They have their own words within those worlds. They have their own terminologies within those worlds, and some worlds have the same terminology, but they can mean completely different things. And it's important that you understand that. Like, I've done a lot of video editing recently. Would I say I'm a video editor? Probably not. I'm probably doing it at the moment at a semi-professional level, but I'm by no means a video editor. So sometimes it's good to undersell and then overperform, in your various areas. And it can be a lot, because you're bringing a lot to the fore, but what it enables you to do is to control your creativity. I'm not saying by any means do all of what I'm doing and get professional equipment for all the different things you do. But for example, if you're starting off as a singer, you can literally produce things on your phone at the moment. You can use iMachine to produce beats, for example. You can use GarageBand to record your vocals and mix. You've got an iPad. You can do all those things on an iPad. You can buy any cheap laptop and begin your journey with like Ableton Live or with FL Studio. Or you can buy a really old MacBook Pro and begin your journey with Logic Pro. There's so many different ways you can begin things, but don't be afraid to begin. Don't be afraid don't be afraid of new worlds, I'd say. Don't be afraid of new worlds, because in those new worlds may hold a key to a breakthrough for you. I'm not plugging breakthrough sessions, that's just the reality of what it is. I'd also say really try and learn the history of music. I think that's another one that I love. I'm actually quite an quote-unquote appreciator of music. You may not think so if you watch my what I listen to if you're ever in my car, because I mainly just kind of play gospel. But I'm aware of the history of music. I like all different things. I like rock. I like a bit of pop. I like R&B, soul, and my favorites probably. I even like jazz, because as a musician, as I've learned how to appreciate and play different instruments. I didn't talk about guitar actually. Yeah, so as I said, I had that guitar, and then I had a few lessons from a friend of mine, which was Charles at the time. And then after I got some more lessons from a good friend of mine, Sammy Skills, lessons which I still take with me to this day. And so I have had formal training in some stuff, but not the in-depth that you would think to be semi-operational in those gifts, for example. But I think we're in a different era now. We're in a different time where it's about being self-sustained, because you have to do the artist development to develop yourself. And so sometimes you may want to present yourself in a certain way, but you don't have the money to pay someone to help you present yourself in a certain way. Get learning, try and learn what people are doing. So even then, if you have to spend on it, that you have an understanding of what you're spending money on, and your money can go in a more intentional direction, as well as you're spending smart money. So you're spending money where you understand what you're paying for and the value in what you're paying for. For me now, like getting into mixing, like paying someone £30-50 to £100 even to mix a track, for me doesn't seem like a stretch, because I realize how much goes into mixing. I can spend days mixing a track, and probably not advisable, and that's probably just my inexperience that shows. But if someone else can do that for me, that's time I can spend with my kids, that's time. So if I have the money, I have no problem exchanging and giving someone money for time, because it is one of two things you're spending to invest in this journey. It's money or it's time. And so you have to pick that battle really well, whether you're going to spend money or whether you're going to spend time. That's what I'd say in relation to that. And so yeah, anyway, with the guitar, I felt like the Holy Spirit was just leading me to play more, and so I would just pick up the guitar and learn things. And even piano, keys, this goes back to my giving and serving thing. I used to play piano keys, but maybe not that great. And then I was kind of forced through church. When I say forced, no one forced me as in you got to play keys, but it was kind of suggested. And then I started to play keys every week in church, just for myself, leading praise and worship. And it didn't go so well. I really wasn't good at it. But the fundamentals, again, it goes back to I had the fundamentals from doing the classical training, that chords now, like I might not be able to play like other people, definitely not, especially not in gospel, but I have an understanding. If you tell me what key something's in, I've got an understanding of the chords and the numbers that are in that key, for example. I learned the numbers system, and I know, okay, I'm in that key. I can sort of figure out what's going on, especially if I've got an instrument in my hand. I don't really play by ear so much. That's probably something I need to work on. But if I have chords, I can figure things out and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, things... And what I've found in my journey for learning is people like to really, really overcomplicate things. There are a lot of things which are very simple concepts, but they don't want you to know the simplicity of the concept, because if it does, it kind of like attacks their world in a way. And those who really, you find when you listen to masters talk about things, they will really always harp on about simplicity, because they've learned so much. Now they've learned how to strip things back. So sometimes there's something pure about approaching an instrument. As I said, that song I wrote, couldn't tell you to this day what I played on that guitar for that song, but I just picked up the guitar and I played a song that just sounded good to my ear. And I'm sure at some point when I figure out the chords for that, I'll realize, oh, that was actually a good progression that I played. But it was approaching that with a childlike way. So I just encourage you just to approach music and whatever endeavors you're doing with a childlike energy, a childlike attitude towards it. Like anything can happen. I'm just going to approach it. I'm going to love it. I'm going to treat it well. And I'm just going to try and work towards something. And I'm not claiming to know everything about anything. That goes back to humility. and the stuff I was talking about before, and being genuinely humble. And I have to be genuinely humble. I think for me, knowing I can do so many things also shows me the amount of people. I could name you someone in every single field that I am active in, whether it's singing, whether it's producing, whether it's playing an instrument. I could name you a person in every single one of those fields, even people that I know that are better than me in those fields. And so that humility comes with the territory, because you're not going to be the best in those fields unless you spend the time to do it. Like, you're not spending the 10,000 hours into something, but the longer you stay in something is the more you naturally get those hours under your belt. So at this point, as I said, I don't think I'm a master mix engineer, I don't think I'm a master engineer, I don't think I'm a master singer, but I've spent a lot of time in certain things to the point where I feel like I'm coming to a point where I'm starting to get hold and a level of mastery over my gifts. And then as time goes on, you get even more of a level. So yeah, you have to learn about history, because you have to learn about the influence of things and different things, as well as you have to kind of understand how artists grow. For me, one of the main things I love is biographies. I love the biographies of successful people, because I always feel like there's some level of gold to be extracted from hearing how successful people made it, how everybody deals with a level of rejection, how they overcame their very evident things that they're going to have to battle through to get to where you can see them. And so yeah, that's it. I mean, this really kind of concludes the sustain sessions. I hope you've enjoyed them. I hope you really have enjoyed them. I think there are some things to take away. I think a lot of what I've talked about is mentality, and the ability to not be bogged down by your current mentality, to fix your mentality in the correct position, to be humble, to learn, to submit to people, to love people, and to give. And I think that encompasses all of what it means to be an artist. And for me, above all, love God with your artistry, love God with who you are, and just be the best that you can be. And you will be sitting here 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 7 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, still recording music, because it's not always specifically about the end result. Sometimes it's about the journey, and it's about obedience, and it's about doing what you know and love. And there's no greater honor, I think, than to be able to serve God with your gifts and to be in the game to continue to put out music. So thank you so much for joining. This has been Sustain Sessions. Pray for me. Hopefully there'll be some level of other sessions coming along at some point. Jump in the comments if there's anything else you would like to learn, whether it's music publishing, because I do have quite a bit of an understanding of that world. And I've definitely done over 10,000 hours in music publishing. And or if it's just how to physically put out a release, or if you want to know how to construct a song or a drum loop or just whatever, like, I'm definitely open to show people how to do different things. Or if there's anything you have questions about in terms of skills and learning different things, definitely hit me up. I could try to tell you some shortcuts and things due to spending so much time on different things. So thank you so much, guys. God bless you. If you can, go out and get the EP, which is coming out on Sunday. But even if you don't, God bless you, and thank you so much for tuning in, and hope to see you in the future. God bless.